Good morning. Today you're going to be taking some notes on ServSafe. The next objective 3.0, which is going to be behind the green divider. All these notes are going to go behind your green divider. We're going to cover the first 3 sections in ServSafe. And you did your textbook orientation yesterday, so you should be a little familiar with the book. If you want to open your book to follow along with the notes, that'll be fine. And you will be doing an assignment from the book at the end of the notes. If I get to going too fast, please raise your hand and the teacher will stop the presentation. We'll pause it so that you can continue to take notes. If you have any questions, please ask, and if I need to, I'll help you with that when I return. The first chapter is providing safe food, and you'll want to get out a sheet of loose leaf paper and you're going to take a few notes on some information. The first thing we need to talk about is a foodborne illness. And you've probably heard of this as food poisoning. In your notes, you may want to come up with some ways to simplify a few terms that we'll talk about. FBI is how I write it if I'm writing notes, instead of writing out foodborne illness every time.
Ms. Wilson, please call 224. Ms. Wilson, 224.
A foodborne illness is considered an outbreak when these 3 conditions are met, and you'll need to jot down these 3. First of all, if 2 or more people have the same symptoms, the same illness, throwing up, diarrhea, after eating the same food. If one person eats at a restaurant and gets sick, it is not considered a foodborne illness outbreak. You have to have 2 or more people that ate the same thing that have the same symptoms. The second thing that has to be met for it to be considered an outbreak is that there is an investigation by the state and local regulatory authorities. That means the health department comes out and starts almost a CSI investigation, and the state health department gets involved as well. The third condition that has to be met for an illness to be considered an outbreak is that lab results come back and indicate what food made people sick. And the reason that's so important is so the restaurant can begin to figure out what they did to make the people sick so that they can prevent that problem from happening again. A few ways food becomes unsafe, and you'll want to write down each of these 4. Food becomes unsafe, first of all, by time temperature abuse. If you leave food out on the counter for too long that needs to be refrigerated, it can begin to grow bacteria. Sometimes the food spoils, but most of the time it's because there's a microorganism that's growing in the food that makes us sick. If you have left leftovers out on the counter overnight instead of putting them in the refrigerator, you don't need to go in and eat that food because it's been time temperature abused. Second way food becomes unsafe is through cross-contamination. Bacteria from one food is transferred to another food, or bacteria from a person is transferred to a food. In the situation that you see here on the board, the bacteria from the chicken can be transferred to the lettuce. The lettuce will not be cooked again, so the raw chicken has contaminated the lettuce and makes it unsafe to eat. Third way that food becomes unsafe is through poor personal hygiene of workers. We wear our hats, we wear gloves when we need to, we wear our aprons and jackets, and make sure that we wash our hands often because we don't want to be personally responsible for contaminating food and making it unsafe. We'll have a whole chapter on personal hygiene, so we'll learn more about that. The fourth way food can become unsafe is by poor cleaning and sanitizing practices. If we're not washing our dishes well, if we're not washing surfaces well, we can be transferring microorganisms and bacteria to the food, and so we need to be sure that we're doing a good job with cleaning and sanitizing. And again, we're going to have a whole chapter in ServSafe on that as well. A few vocabulary words we need to talk about. The first one is TCS foods. TCS stands for time and temperature control for safety. To me, it should be TTCS, but ServSafe goes with TCS. And we're going to write down several examples of TCS foods in your notes. These are foods that need to be kept in the refrigerator in order to be kept safe. Some of these will be very familiar to you. Milk and dairy products are TCS foods. Eggs are TCS foods. You can't just leave them sitting on the counter for hours on end. Pork and other meats, such as beef. Poultry, such as chicken and turkey, are TCS foods. Fish is a TCS food. Shellfish are TCS foods. Here we have some shrimp and some clams. One that might be surprising to you, baked potatoes are TCS foods. There's a bacteria that loves to grow in starchy foods, and they just love the moist environment of a baked potato. So baked potatoes should be written down as a TCS food. Rice is also a TCS food once it's been cooked. Dry rice can stay in your pantry in a bag for days and days and days, but once it's cooked, you have that bacteria again that loves starchy food, and bacteria is a lovely place for that to grow and reproduce. Soy products. Here you see soy pods. You may know these as edamame. Tofu, this is a soft tofu and a firm tofu. You see soybeans growing around our area in fields, and then they're used to create these products that a lot of people use as a protein substitute. If you're a vegetarian, tofu is also used in some oriental cooking. It absorbs the flavor of other foods that it's cooked with, but because it is a protein, it is a TCS food. Cut fruits and melons and vegetables are TCS foods. If we had a whole tomato or a whole cantaloupe, then it would not be considered a TCS food. But once that fruit or vegetable is cut, it becomes TCS. Needs to be refrigerated for safety. Bean sprouts. You've had these mixed in with other foods. They grow in a moist environment at room temperature, and so you have to be very careful when you're growing bean sprouts and when you're storing them. They need to be stored in the refrigerator. Very easy for those to grow bacteria and mold. And then the last TCS example that we're going to jot down, these are flavored oils. Olive oil on its own is fine and is not considered TCS. You can keep a bottle of that sitting on your pantry shelf or beside your on your counter. But once you add any kind of herbs or seasonings or garlic to that, it becomes a TCS food because you've combined another ingredient with that. So that's something that's a little bit different, you may not be as familiar with. These are examples of TCS foods. Another term, vocabulary term that you need to know are RTE foods, ready-to-eat foods. Ready-to-eat foods is a food that is going to be eaten without any further preparation, washing, or cooking. So all of these foods, once we've made the sub sandwich, it's a ready-to-eat food. Once we've made the cupcake, it's ready to eat. And an apple that you're going to eat just fresh is a ready-to-eat food. You're not going to need to do anything else to it before you eat it. And here are a few other examples of ready-to-eat foods. Cooked foods, washed fruits and vegetables, deli meats. We'll be talking more about ready-to-eat foods, but it's important that you observe when people in a restaurant are preparing these for you. You have to wear gloves if you're going to be handling ready-to-eat foods. You don't want bare hands to touch any of these items that you're serving to a guest. Now, let's look at people who are most at risk for getting a foodborne illness. There are three main populations we need to look at, and you'll need to write these down. Elderly people, preschool-aged children, so children up until about age 3 or 4, and people who have a compromised immune system. They're already sick, they have some medical conditions, they're taking some prescription medication, are more at risk. You and I might get a foodborne illness and think it's just a little stomach bug. If these groups of people develop a foodborne illness from food that's contaminated, it can be very dangerous for them. It can even be deadly for them. They simply don't have as strong an immune system as we do. So what you and I might get over in a day or so could land these folks in the hospital. We need to be very careful when we're preparing food for elderly, preschool-age children, and people who are already sick. Now, the new edition of ServSafe eliminated one group of people that was in your ServSafe book as a high-risk population earlier. I disagree with their change, but we have to go with what they say. They used to list pregnant women as a high-risk population. They have taken that out of ServSafe. I disagree. I think that pregnant women should still be listed as an at-risk population, but we have to go with what the ServSafe folks are telling us now based on their best research with the food code. So if you see that as a question or a situation that you need to respond to, remember that ServSafe at this point does not consider the pregnant woman a high-risk population. Now, you will be given a name tag. I want you, after you look over your name tag, to come up to the front of the room and introduce yourself to the class and stand on the side of the board where you think you belong. If you think you are one of those high-risk population people, then you will stand on the left side. If you do not think you're a high-risk population, then you're going to stand on the right-hand side. And I'm going to ask that you pause while you stand on this side, and then we're going to check ourselves. Now, let me tell you who should be standing on each side. Andre, 6-month infant, you should be on the left. You are a high-risk population. Betsy, elderly woman, you are high risk. Joey, 4-year-old preschooler, you are high risk. Mary has just had a liver transplant. Mary, you are high risk. Your immune system is not very strong. You need to be on the left. Quinn, you're in your mid-20s and you're a chain smoker. You might be at high risk for lung cancer, but you are not high risk for a foodborne illness. So Quinn, you should be on the right. Clay, you're a middle-aged man. You should be on the right. You are not a high-risk person. Eric, you're an AIDS patient. You should be standing on the left. You are at high risk because your immune system is compromised. Randall, you're a high school basketball star. Way to go. You should be on the right. You are not at high risk. Bill, you are high risk. You should be standing on the left. You're a cancer patient undergoing treatment. And Linda, you're a pregnant woman. According to what we've just learned from ServSafe, you should be on the right, not at high risk. Thanks for playing the role of different people, and that does not mean that's who you are, but I know some of you might want to wear your name tag around the rest of the day. Go back to your seats, and we're going to continue notes, and you'll pause the notes until people get back to their
Someone
seats.
from guidance, please call 224. Someone from guidance, please call 224.
Now, let's review a few things together. You'll raise your hand to answer, and then we'll click to see how you did. A bag of flour, does it need time and temperature control to keep it safe? Oops, let's go back.
Ms. Goswick, please call 224. Ms. Goswick, 224.
Flour does not need time and temperature control to keep it safe. Cut lettuce, does it need time and temperature control to keep it safe? Yes, it does. Sliced melon, this looks like a cantaloupe. Does it need time and temperature control to keep it safe? Yes, it does. Cooked beans, these look like they're green beans almondine. They've got some almonds they've cooked with those. It's a very popular dish. Do these cooked beans need time and temperature control to keep them safe? Yes, they do. Baked potatoes, do they need time and temperature control to keep them safe? Yes, they do. Now, what's the problem here? Is it time temperature abuse, cross-contamination, poor personal hygiene, or poor cleaning and sanitizing? Your correct choice should be C, poor personal hygiene. This young man is coughing into his hand while he's carrying food. Now, what's the problem here in storage? Let's assume that this red is dripping from up above from some beef. Let's not think this is blood from a person. What's the problem here? Do we have time temperature abuse, cross-contamination, poor personal hygiene, or poor cleaning and sanitizing? The reason this is labeled do not use is because of B, cross-contamination. Now, this might be a tricky one because you haven't learned your temperatures yet, but these chicken breasts, the person's measuring the temperature to see if they're ready to take off the grill. Temperature is measuring 115 degrees on a digital thermometer. The correct temperature should be 165 degrees for these to be safe to eat. So what's the problem? Is it time temperature abuse, cross-contamination, poor personal hygiene, or poor cleaning and sanitizing? Correct choice should be A, time temperature abuse. What's the problem here? We have someone cleaning up, not doing a super job. Is this an example of A, time temperature abuse, B, cross-contamination, C, poor personal hygiene, or D, poor cleaning and sanitizing? And of course your answer should be D, poor cleaning and sanitizing. You're going to do an assignment or a couple of things on an assignment to review your information. If you'll get out your books, you will need a new sheet of loose leaf paper. Please don't write this on the same page as your notes. If you would please make sure your name is at the top right corner of your paper. You're going to write the title of the exercise and the page number. So when you get this back and keep it in your notebook, you can go back to the book to see how you did. If you would write the numbers going down on the left side of your paper in one column, that would make it a lot easier for us to review. On page 1.7 in your book, you're going to do Apply Your Knowledge. There are two different sections there. What's the cause and which is it? And then you'll also do the study questions on page 112 in your textbook. Use the book to help you. Don't rely just on your brain. The problem that I see that students have sometimes with information from the book, questions in the book, is that they go by what they remember rather than going back to find evidence in the book. So make sure that you go back and check yourself in the book before you record your answers. Remember to turn in your assignment in the green basket by the door, and be sure to bring your book back to school tomorrow.